asked you that before. Good morning. My name is Joseph Richardson. I am a partner at McCune Law Group, head of the Racial and Economic Justice practice. We are here for a press conference related to the recent filings on behalf of our client, James Cook. And so what we will do here is I will speak for a couple moments, then Mr. Cook will do a brief statement. So on behalf of our client, James Cook, who's a registered nurse for over 25 years, we recently filed a California CRD complaint, Civil Rights Department complaint. Some people would know it as a DFEH claim, Department of Fair Employment and Housing. The name of the organization, which is the State Discrimination Organization, has changed to California, to Civil Rights Department. So we've recently filed a CRD discrimination complaint, claim against the Riverside University Hospital Behavioral Health. Often we may refer to them here as RUHS, Riverside University Health System. We've alleged discrimination, harassment, retaliation, and failure to prevent all of the above. The respondents as to the CRD claim are Riverside University Hospital Behavioral Health, which we'll sometimes call RUHS, and Leah Patterson as an individual on the harassment claim. Under law, individuals can be sued for employment-related harassment. We've also filed a public entity claim for potential non-discrimination causes of action against the County of Riverside as well. Mr. Cook was employed at Riverside University Hospital Behavioral Health, the Arlington campus. Sometimes people will call it the Riverside campus, as a nurse, and was later promoted to a director. He'll talk more about that. The RUHS system has two campuses, Arlington, which is in Riverside, and the Moreno Valley Hospital campus. Mr. Cook is African American, and most of the nurses at Arlington tend to be black, while at the Moreno Valley campus, they are mostly non-black and particularly white. Mr. Cook worked in supervisory positions for most of his 15 years at RUHS. He was a house supervisor, he was a nurse manager, he was a nurse director, and then a clinical director, which was his position until his termination on September 28th, 2023. Prior to 2009, he held other positions with Riverside County, including as an alternative sentencing program nurse, as well as a registered nurse in mental health court. Mr. Cook is and always was a hard worker. At RUHS, he matured into the role of leader. He grew to the point where he oversaw 57 of the 77 beds that were at his facility, in addition to the emergency section. He met the challenges of leading a medical facility during COVID head-on, among other things, preparing an unused section of his facility at the Arlington campus as a COVID patient area. He also created a program for de-escalating issues with volatile patients that he was asked to teach on both campuses for implementation, and which has been used on the RUHS complex campuses with great success. Mr. Cook did all of the foregoing while observing inequities in pay and resources between his campus, Arlington, and the Moreno Valley campus. These inequities largely fell on racial lines in regard to the makeup of in light of the makeup of the nursing staff of the two campuses. Mr. Cook was often fighting a two-front war, seeking to provide the best services to patients possible, while seeking to have the Riverside staff and patients paid and resourced in a comparable manner to the way the Moreno Valley campus was paid and resourced. In response to questions why one campus was not as well resourced as the other, or why people on one campus that did the same work as the other campus did not get the same pay for doing so, Mr. Cook often heard that the Moreno Valley campus is bigger, or the job classification that provides more money happened to be made just for the Moreno Valley campus. This was despite the fact that the Arlington campus employees did the same work, sometimes under more dangerous conditions, because Arlington is an acute mental health facility. The fact that the Arlington campus employees in question were often black and the Moreno Valley employees in question were often non-black or white was not lost on Mr. Cook, but did not seem to be particularly important to RUHS. As he spoke out on issues of concern, he found his leadership unfairly made subject to ridicule and second guessing by upper management. He also found himself the subject of harassment and retaliation, including investigations and ultimate termination by RUHS, all for speaking out on issues that he saw at the Arlington campus. He'll talk a bit more about the more specific issues in a moment. So after 15 years spent, to recap, most recently as clinical director on the RUHS Arlington campus, Mr. Cook was fired, and in fact, he was fired the very day he found out that his own internal grievance complaint for discrimination and retaliation was ruled not substantiated, the very day. Now, we'll hear from for a moment from Mr. Cook, and I'll add that I don't intend to have Mr. Cook answer any questions on the back end, just so you know.
All right, before I begin, I just want to say, give a thank you to Mr. Richardson for his representation and the McCune Law Group, because without them, I don't know where I would be. Also want to say thank you to the staff at both campuses, RUHS, Arlington campus and the Moreno Valley campus, for their support. And a very, very special thank you to the Arlington campus for their calls and their cards and acknowledging everything I've done for the Arlington campus. I've been in mental health since 1987, and I began working as a full-time employee at Riverside County in 2001. But I first started in 1996 as a psychiatric technician. I would work at the Riverside County building in Arlington campus as a psychiatric technician. From there, as I said before, I started working as a full-time employee at the Alternative Sentencing Program in 2001. I was then later transferred to the Mental Health Court in 2004, 2005, and I remained there until about 2008. Once I left there, I was asked to apply for a per diem position as a house supervisor. Now, it must be noted that this position didn't exist. So my superior learned about my accomplishments, and they really wanted me to work there, so they created a position for me. From that in 2009, I was promoted to director of nursing, or manager of Unit B and C. And this is a 77-bed facility at the Arlington campus. Of the 77 beds, I had 56 of those beds. And Unit B and C, they housed mainly the moderately acute psychiatric patients, but it was combined with the very acute psychiatric patients. From there, my position morphed into Clinical Director of Nursing 1 and Clinical Director of Nursing 2, and I remained at that position until my termination in September 28, 2023. I'm very proud of my accomplishments that I have made at the Arlington campus. One of those accomplishments, as Mr. Richardson spoke of, was the COBERT. And COBERT stands for Behavior Emergency Response Team. And I created that in response to the rapid response that they had at the medical facility. And the rapid response was basically designed to prevent a patient from going into a full-blown cold blue. So when I designed the COBERT, now I do have to mention that COBERT does exist in back east, but the COBERT there primarily functioned to prevent the emergency rooms from backing up from too many patients. So when I created the COBERT, basically when I designed it to, when a patient first began to come out of his baseline or get triggered, that they will call the COBERT, and then the team will come and try to de-escalate the patient before they went into a full-blown crisis. So that went very well, and the main campus, which is Moreno Valley campus, when I did a presentation about all the great things that the Colbert had done for the Arlington campus, they wanted the Colbert as well. So I consulted and trained a few of their staff on how to de-escalate patients. Another thing I did was I also created, I was asked to open up the COVID unit in January 2020 when COVID first hit. So, of course, my question was, since I already have 56 of the 77 beds, why was I selected to open up the COVID unit? And my boss's response, and I quote, because I want it done right. So I opened up the COVID unit, everything went well. And then about a few months later, I was asked to do another task. And again, I was already the manager over Unit B and C, and our emergency department, known as ETS, did not have a leader or a director for over a year. So a lot of their processes has went by the wayside. The staff didn't have all the tools they needed to get the job done, so they asked me to take over. So I agreed. I took over ETS along with my 2 units, and I turned everything around within 6 months, and everything was functioning on all cylinders. After that, a lot of issues came as far as pay disparities. When the Moreno Valley campus adopted the Colbert, they were giving their employees the Colbert differential, and they denied the Colbert differential to the place where it was designed, and that was at the Arlington campus, where I designed it there. And they refused, as a matter of fact, they fought tooth and nail not to give it to the staff at that facility.
And the differential is increasing pay, right?
That's correct.
Making sure.
Thank you. And then also, during COVID, the healthcare workers were very scarce during that time, during COVID. So the RUHS offered what they call surge pay and differential pay for COVID. And they were paying this to the registered nurses, the licensed vocational nurses, and the certified nursing assistants at the Moreno Valley campus. However, at the Arlington campus, only the our registered nurses were receiving the COVID surge and differential pay. So I spoke out about it because it was unfair. And about 2 years later, they were able to receive the licensed vocational nurses and the certified nursing assistants were able to receive that additional pay. Also, CDPH filed a what they call a 2567, which is a corrective action plan against the Moreno Valley campus because they showed us inadequate support during crisis situations. While I was at the Arlington campus, I received unfair treatment, unfair and biased treatment by a Leah Patterson. Excuse me. And other issues. And Leah Patterson, her title is known as the Chief Clinical Integration Officer, which was changed from the Chief Nursing Officer. At her hands, I experienced bullying, belittling, harassment, exclusion, and abuse of power. On one occasion, after my workday, I returned home about maybe 4 or 5 o'clock, and I received a call from one of my units asking for a direction that my superiors could answer. So, as directed by Leah Patterson, I gave her a call about the request of the staff, and what I received was harassment, condescending statements, belittling, rude, discourteous behavior, and this was done in front of my family. When I returned back to work a couple of days later, I was met with a admonishment. An admonishment is basically stating that you're under investigation and that you have to meet with the HR personnel. So when I did meet with the HR personnel, one of the first things they did was question if I created the Colbert or not. And then I also made a complaint that about Miss Patterson being rude and discourteous, condescending to me in front of my family, and they refused to investigate those claims, stating that because the people who witnessed the treatment were not county employees. But previously, they have questioned others, individuals who were not a part of Riverside County employment. I was denied promotions after promotions. When my position morphed into Clinical Director Nursing 1 and Clinical Director Nursing 2, I looked at the job description for Clinical Director Nursing 2, and I more than qualified for it. I exceeded the qualifications, and I was denied Clinical Director Nursing 2. However, when I complained about it, Ms. Patterson stated that it wasn't designed for the staff at the Arlington campus. It was only designed for the staff at the Moreno Valley campus. And then once again, it's like the fair pay and promotions only went to the staff at the Moreno Valley campus. Also, I was also denied, I also applied for the Executive Director of Nursing position, and this was my boss's position, but she retired. So I applied for that position, and mind you, again, I have 56 of the 77 beds at the hospital, and I also had the emergency department. And the emergency department can hold up to 26 to over 50 beds. So we basically ran at the emergency department, which is known as ETS, 40 to 50 patients. So I had a total of 100, 106 patients. So basically I was running the whole facility. So when I went in to do my interview, I was denied the opportunity to be promoted to the Executive Director of Nursing position. However, they interviewed 3 other candidates that had less qualification than I did, and they were able to make it to the first interview and the second interview. I was denied my second interview. And because of that, I complained about the unfair treatment. And in April 2023, I was nominated for the Daisy Award. Now, the Daisy Award is a prestigious award for the registered nurses that was created by the Barnes family. And this was such a prestigious award. I really wanted to achieve one of these awards. Why I didn't think I was going to be able to achieve this award because it was given to mostly the registered nurses. Well, the Daisy Committee came up with a Nurse Leadership Award, and I was nominated for that award. And in May of 2023, during Nurses Week, the award was scheduled to be presented to the winner. Well, on that day that the award was to be presented, 2 of my staff members came into my office in tears, and they were very upset about me not receiving that award. And again, I had no clue that I was going to receive that award. And they were saying, you're supposed to receive that award, but they canceled the award. So when I did my investigation, I saw that the Daisy Committee had been at our facility decorating the auditorium for the presentation. Well, from my understanding, when Ms. Patterson saw that she was going to be presenting the award to me, she canceled the award. So I have not received that award to this very day. Due to the blatant discrimination and retaliation by my supervisors, I filed a complaint under the County Board of Supervisors known as the C-25, and this is a non-discrimination and anti-harassment policy and complaint procedure. For the allegations of discrimination, harassment, and retaliation by Ms. Patterson. Again, her title was Chief Clinical Integration Officer, formerly known as the Chief Nursing Officer, based on race, color, and gender. On the morning of September 28th, 2023, I received an email from HR department stating that my claim of my grievance was unsubstantiated. And later that day, about I would say about 2 or 3 hours later, I was terminated. I was terminated from my position, and I must add that I spent 30 years trying to be the best registered nurse and a nurse manager I could possibly be, and for that to be taken away, it was like your life is gone, basically, for me. I've given Riverside County my heart, and I worked hard to be the manager that even the citizens can be proud of. And by no means am I saying that I'm in the same category as your Fred Hamptons, your Martin Luther Kings, or your Malcolm X's. But to my kids, that's who they see me as. They know all about my good works. And to them, I was stopped like they were stopped. Maybe not in the same manner, but we were stopped just the same. It is a shame that RUS has positioned itself as an impediment to the progress of people trying to serve the community to the best of their ability. No one should be subjected to the treatment for any reason, not even including their race. In summary, I believe that I was discriminated against because of my race and my ethnicity, resulting in unjust termination and retaliation because I resisted any form of discrimination or harassment directed at me and others. I believe that I have claims for both discriminatory and non-discriminatory, yet legal actions by RUHS and by at least one of its supervisors. In conclusion, I'm seeking justice related to what I believe to be discriminatory and retaliatory firing. This is why the legal action I'm undertaking is necessary. I would like the information related to each of my investigations that were brought against me. On at least one occasion, I was told there was an investigation of allegations against me, but I received no word of its actual results. I did not desire to find myself here speaking with the media about the loss of my job. However, I believe all things happen for a reason. And I know there are people in similar situations that I'm in at the RUH campus and elsewhere, but they have not been heard because they're voiceless. But today I declare and I make a choice to be the voice for the voiceless. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. A bit more about our current claims and what will be the things that we allege related to that, and what are those things. So we claim wrongful termination and discrimination in violation of Government Code Section 12940. There are several aspects under that law. There's discrimination, there's retaliation, there is harassment, and there is a failure to prevent all three. And so we are claiming each of those. So we allege that different treatment of nurses and other staff on the two campuses strongly suggests discrimination, either intentional or otherwise, when given the sharp racial disparities between the campuses. As it pertains to harassment, as Mr. Cook stated, he's faced harassment by RUHS as well as by individual supervisor. Among other things, there's condescending treatment. There is blowback when he follows protocol in terms of solving problems related to the issues that are going on there. He was chastised multiple times by RUHS representatives about things that he'd done. His leadership was second-guessed. He was treated in a way that made it difficult for him to be around the higher-ups, and so he sought to do his job in peace and to avoid run-ins with upper management because while staff and patients appreciated his work and his vigilance, upper management did not. We also claim that he was retaliated against. He sought to address pay disparity issues. He talked about the COVID differential that they had to fight 2 years in order to get. He talked about the additional pay for the Code BERT program that to this day I still don't believe that the Arlington campus has received. They have not, correct? They have not. Okay, and that goes back several years based on a program that he actually created and that others actually took credit for actually having done. Interestingly, as he stated, at the beginning of an investigation, the first question that they asked him, or one of the questions they asked him, was whether or not he actually created the Code BERT program. I think that if you ask anyone that he worked with or that worked for him, they would be able to tell you that Mr. Cook is who created that program. As we said, he spoke up when RUHS refused to give the $7 per hour increase that happened for folks that got the BERT training. His speaking up was never appreciated. He was retaliated against for making complaints about his campus nurses, who are mostly black, tended to be, not being paid equally, and even patients at times not having equal supplies and resources compared to the patients on the Moreno Valley campus. He was retaliated against for his grievance complaints surrounding his failure to promote and related issues. We believe that his treatment demonstrates a custom and practice of discrimination and retaliation within RUHS. And as we stated before, on September 28, 2023, the very day he was informed that his complaint was rendered unsubstantiated following an investigation, he was let go. The letter on the result of the complaint was written the previous day and is dated the previous day, but he learned both of the result of the investigation as well as of his termination on the very same day. We already mentioned that we allege wrongful failure to take reasonable steps to prevent harassment, discrimination, and retaliation. RUHS failed miserably to take reasonable steps to prevent these things, including appropriate training of its employees, including his higher-ups, and the methods by which harassment, discrimination, and retaliation may be prevented, and failure to prevent it in the first instance. We also allege that there's potential disparate impact. So even if RUHS wants to argue that there's no intentional discrimination, RUHS had policies and practices that wrongfully discriminated against my client and others for that matter. The policy of paying people on one campus differential payments for COVID, when COVID was everywhere, and for covert training, when the training was everywhere and frankly was as relevant as it pertained to acute mental health patients, and those on his campus were more likely to have to employ those things that they were being trained. When that campus happens to be mostly black and the other campus happens to be mostly non-black, not paying folks the same for the same work, even though they deserve to be paid, and even though the people in question are qualified, is not right. We believe that that's potentially disparate impact discrimination, where the employer has a practice that appears neutral but has an adverse effect on members of a protected group and cannot be justified by business necessity. These policies were a harmful factor in causing Mr. Cook's real harm, and among other things, not being paid for the covert differential, not being categorized as a clinical nurse director too, when he clearly qualified to be so qualified. And when others that were less qualified, and certainly not more qualified, were so characterized, it was just because they luckily found themselves on the other campus. Our plans are we've already filed the CRD complaint. The CRD complaint has been filed, and we have an immediate right to sue letter, so we can sue the case. Out of abundance of caution, we've also done a public entity claim against the County of Riverside as well, and it will be rejected as a matter of course, as it always is, within 45 days. At that point, we will actually file our lawsuit. The other filings have occurred. Our case is one of discrimination, both intentional and otherwise, severe emotional distress, public policy violations, and wage disparity issues. Here's our goal. We want to pull back the veil and uncover what we believe to be a wall of inequity and inequality between the Riverside, Arlington, and Moreno Valley campuses at RUHS. Most of all, assuming we do the foregoing, we want to discover why these inequities exist and do what we can to draw attention to them and to permanently remove them. From the public, we seek to hear from others that are or were similarly situated at RUHS. We want you to know that we see you. We know that it already takes courage for you to focus on providing services to the public, be they patients or otherwise. The medical field is often the last line of defense, making the difference between someone's life or death. Good employees should not have to make the agonizing decision on whether to bring a claim against their employer while they are trying to serve patients, particularly when doing so may risk their employment, as we see today. For better, for worse, Mr. Cook's circumstance in this case makes his choice as clear as it is difficult. That's why we're here. To the public, if what we're saying here today rings true with you and you see your way clear to speak out about what you see or what you've seen, the truth will be the light. We encourage you to do so. As it pertains to bringing light to employment situations where the darkness of inequity, harassment, and discrimination exist, we are proud to be of service. With that, I'll take questions.
Cities under the law have whistleblower protections for people when they see something wrong happen, especially in government. When you look at the timing of the firing and the decision about his complaints, it seems more like they weren't just judging the situation, but maybe they were judging him at the same time. Is that appropriate for that kind of investigation, where you're judging a person as well as a complaint?
Well, you underscore an irony, right? He's making a complaint about something, but he finds himself fired at the time. So yes, it does seem like they were judging him at that time. That's something that we plan to get to the bottom of. The fact of the matter is there's a whole lot of claims that we can make in this case. There's actually, to your point, whistleblower availability when you're talking about certain employees that work with public entities and things like that. There's potential 1102.5 labor code liability as well, and we'll be looking at all that. But yes, it is an absolute irony that he seemed to be judged at the time that he was seeking information or seeking to have an investigation because he's responding to something that he has happened to him. The question becomes, what message does it send for anyone who's at work that wants to make a complaint, anyone at RUHS today that wants to make a complaint about something that's happened? Literally, if you look at our case, and a 15-year employee that has implemented programs that they do non-sheepishly today, his effect will always be felt there, and it is felt as we speak. For someone in that category to get fired, well, what's going to happen to somebody that wasn't in management? What's going to happen to somebody that didn't implement a program and that didn't run 100 beds? It's meant to have a chilling effect, but that's why we're here.
Did the hospital give a reason for Mr. Cook's, their perceived reason for Mr. Cook's termination?
What I remember about, they put something in writing, and one of the things that was interesting was they seemed to connect to, as someone that works at a public entity, you shouldn't be able to snap your fingers and just fire someone, okay? You tend to have a property right in your job. And so what they tried to do, and I don't want to misstate it, but what they tried to do was to act like, since he had been on his particular assignment for less of a period of time, it was like he was probationary. I don't know if they used that word.
They did.
Okay, yeah. Like he was probationary. He's been there for 15 years, but because he got promoted, he's probationary, and so now we can fire him. There was no question that it was pragmatic. I'll just put it to you that way. Anyone else?
You described there as a disparity between compensation and treatment, supplies, and all that between the two campuses with the differential racial makeup. What responsibility does the government have? I don't really fully understand that part, as far as to make sure that even though it's not necessarily because of the race difference, but taking into account that there is one.
Right, and that's a good question. When it comes down to it, if somehow, morally, let's talk about morally, let's talk about legally. Legally, if there is a policy that's neutral on its face, but it has a disparate impact because it tends to affect people that are in one protected category, which could include race, ethnicity, etc., more than or disproportionately than the other, we believe that they have a legal responsibility to deal with it. Okay, so we believe that that's happening at the very least. We also find it interesting that much of what happened to Mr. Cook seemed to coincide with his complaints and the timing of his complaints. We also believe that there seems to be a little bit of a difference in treatment and prioritizing between the two campuses. And what Mr. Cook said, he gave the initials. These nurses give these initials, and I believe he was talking about a state board that talked about and I forget what it's called.
California Department of Public Health.
California Department of Public Health that basically confirmed that resources were low as it pertained to the Arlington campus. So there was confirmation from outside sources that it looked like they weren't paying attention to what was going on the Arlington campus. There's no good reason why people on the Arlington campus that do the same work as the Riverside campus would not be rewarded similarly for doing so. And so there's your legal basis, but morally, there's an argument that you're supposed to avoid the appearance of impropriety. And so if you have a situation where for some reason, you've got a particular race, largely speaking, on one campus, first of all, you have this different racial mix on these different campuses to begin with, at least on some level, and that there seems to be different treatment. That would seem to be something that they would get to the bottom of. Even if everyone is comfortable on their campus, there's no good reason, there's no business necessity why people on one campus get paid less money for doing the same work, particularly given the nature of what they do on the Arlington campus. On the Arlington campus, it is not an easy road because they deal with acute mental health issues. His campus and his experience on his campus is what triggered and what motivated him to bring about the Code BERT program. Who knows whether or not that would have happened or how that would have happened if he was based on the other campus. But both campuses have benefited, and people that have that training, there's no good reason that they shouldn't be paid the same.
How many times did Mr. Cook raise his concerns about any of these?
Oh boy, I would say that there are several, more than two, more than three. When you are leading a group, you're a problem solver. And so what you do is you identify problems and you talk out loud about them because you're trying to solve them, right? And then they were dealt with different ways. Sometimes maybe the problem was dealt with, it took 2 years to get the COVID differential pay, but they ultimately got it. They never got the Code BERT differential pay. Sometimes he is making a statement about something that's going on, and then, as we talked about, the Department of Public Health basically confirmed it. And so, as part of his job, he's supposed to identify the issues. He's supposed to keep folks in compliance. There was an issue where another thing that he spoke out about, which it wasn't appreciated because it seemed to put them through some changes, as it were, pointing out once he became aware that it seemed like a lot of people started working that were not properly credentialed as nurses. There was a box not being checked in terms of confirming and seeing the actual licenses. He stated that. That was not appreciated because it's an extra step. So that kind of thing, to answer your question, really happened as part of his job, perhaps too many times to count. But what was one of the reasons why we're here is because he's fired, and one of the reasons why he's fired is because there was blowback. Nobody that works with Mr. Cook can say he didn't make his contribution and that he wasn't fundamental to the success of that site. But as you have perhaps heard in a story or two, no good deed goes unpunished.
And then will the lawsuit challenge the allegation that he was probationary?
Yeah, I believe so. I mean, we'll have to deal with that. That'll probably be dealt with as a dispositive motion issue as well. So there'll be quite a bit to wade through related to that for sure.
How much of this is, it seems like it was a personality conflict maybe, or just maybe upper management liking lower management or middle management to do it their way? And how that created maybe an issue that it kind of just built up until then.
Interestingly, there didn't seem to be a personality conflict when it came to the campus benefiting from the work that Mr. Cook did. There was no personality conflict there. However, I must say sometimes when you are a strong black male and you speak clearly but respectfully, That's not always taken the right way. That's not always appreciated. There were instances, you may remember, that he stated that he mentioned that there was a gender issue as well in addition to race. There was a time when he was introduced to someone in a professional setting as a single father. Okay? Now, there are those of us around that may not think that that's an issue at all. But, implicit biases and things, come in and creep in where, most regular folks you wouldn't necessarily have introduced in a professional setting. Oh, this is Mr. Cook. He's a single dad. And so there were a lot of things like that would occur. And when you work in majority environments, one of the things that I want to go out of my way to say is Mr. Cook understood how to deal with all kinds of people because he had to succeed. To succeed, he wouldn't have been in the Riverside University system and working for Riverside County for 20 to 25 years if he did not know how to deal with other kinds of people that didn't look like him. However, in no way should he be penalized because of who he is. And so at the end of the day, we believe that where there's smoke, there's fire, and where there were a lot of things that occurred that can only be explained by race, ethnicity, etc., whether intentional or otherwise. Having all of the good intentions in the world does not relieve Riverside County of liability in this instance and in this situation. However, I do say that them firing him and the timing of them doing so does not reek of something that happened by accident.
Was that a formal complaint to Patterson following the phone call the only formal complaint filed against him, or were there others as well by Mr. Cook?
I don't know that there were other formal complaints necessarily, but there were often times where issues were discussed. Interestingly, sometimes Mr. Cook, like the instance that he talked about where he called Ms. Patterson because he was off duty and protocol dictates that if this is a problem that a higher up needs to deal with, I would call her and had been instructed to do so by her anyway. He calls her and he comes back to work the next day and they tell him he's being investigated. Sometimes, heck, he didn't get the chance to bring something. It was being brought against him. How, where, why? Now, of course, they may have just said that. We haven't seen it, whatever else. But again, that's something that we would be seeking to overcome, to underscore. Mr. Cook is not like anyone else, not unlike anyone else. He wasn't cruising for a bruising. He didn't want to sit here and sue them. He wanted to be at work serving patients right now. And so sometimes one of the things that you do is you prioritize and you categorize and say, you know what, I'm going to let this roll off because I've got to service these patients. I'm going to let this roll off because we've got to make sure that we do what it is that we need to do. We're in COVID. Hello, and I know how to deal with this. So often, Mr. Cook made the decision to be what some people would call gun shy. He could have been suing, he could have been bringing stuff a long time ago, but what he really wanted to do is serve his patients and do his work. And looking for the good in people actually had him apply a whole lot of deference, even to inexcusable imperfections on behalf of those that were over him. And that's why we stand here today.
It sounds like from what you just said that he was working within the system before,
Absolutely.
but now he was forced out of the system for good.
Forced out of the system. And dare I say this, not to be terrible or anything, but it's in me to say, now he's at the ball and he has to dance. And so what that means is we're going to leave no stone unturned. We're going to do everything we possibly can, not just so that the county of Riverside deals with him because their hand got caught in the cookie jar, but hopefully we are able to do something that would help people that are still working there or that want to service Riverside. By the way, BTW, IJS, as the kids would say, Riverside and San Bernardino County are majority minority nowadays. He's helping everyone, but he's helping his own people too. You know what I mean? And he wants to do that. That's why he went there to do it. But still, in upper management looks a certain way, and perhaps that's something that they didn't necessarily want either, but we'll see.
So did Patterson bring a complaint that was filed against Mr. Cook, or was it another employee?
You know, I forget who technically brought the complaint, or if it was Ms. Patterson, or how that went. That's a good question. I need to confirm that, and if you want me to, I can, and get back in contact with you before you go to print or whatever. But I have to confirm who actually brought it and how that went.
And do you remember the grounds, the alleged grounds for it?
I don't. Yeah. Wasn't particularly legitimate though, whatever it was. So, but we can confirm that. Anything else? All right, guys. Been fun. Thank you. Appreciate it.